I want you to remember 3 words before this video starts. Nobody was convicted. On July 11, 2005, a lawyer named Robinah Kiyingi was shot 5 times at the gate of her own home in Kampala, Uganda. Police made arrests fast. They had a suspect who allegedly confessed. They had witnesses. They had, on paper, everything they needed, and then, one by one, the people who could have proven it in court, started dying. I'm the Unspoken East. This is East Africa's Unsolved Files. To understand why this case still unsettles people in Uganda, you have to start with who Robinah Kiyingi was. She was a lawyer, married to Dr. Aggrey Kiyingi, a cardiologist based in Australia. The couple moved between continents, and by most accounts, Robinah was well known and well respected in Kampala's legal circles. That on the evening of July 11, 2005, she was driving home from the city centre to her house in Konj, in the Makindye area of Kampala. According to reports, a vehicle followed her the entire way. When she reached her own gate, the place that should have been the safest point of her entire journey, the assailant struck. She was shot 5 times. She died at the scene, at the entrance to her own home. Ugandan police moved with unusual speed. Within a short time, they had arrested 4 people: her husband, Dr. Kiyingi, a police officer named Charles Bwanaho, Kiyingi's own bodyguard, a man named Bob Mugisha, and a Ugandan army soldier, Private John Atwine, who prosecutors alleged had physically pulled the trigger. For a moment, this looked like it might become one of the rare Ugandan murder cases that actually got resolved quickly. It didn't. Here's where the case takes its first disturbing turn. While in custody at Luzaye Maximum Security Prison, Uganda's largest and most notorious prison, Private John Atwine died. He was alleged to have been poisoned. Think about what that actually meant for the case. Atwine wasn't just one of 4 suspects. According to the prosecution, he was the shooter, the person alleged to have physically ended Robinah Kiyingi's life. He was the center of the entire case. And now he was dead, before he could ever be fully tried, cross-examined, or pressured into naming who, if anyone, had ordered him to do it. No one has ever been charged in connection with Atwine's death inside one of the country's most secure prisons. To this day, how exactly he died, and why, has never been publicly, conclusively explained. And for a case that already involved a woman shot dead at her own front gate, this was only the beginning of the pattern. A state witness in the case, a military police officer named Lieutenant Caesar Enya, was shot dead at his own home in Karika, a suburb of Kampala. Then, months later, the chief investigator assigned to the entire Kiyingi case, the officer responsible for building the state's case from the ground up, was also shot dead. Let's be completely clear about what we do and don't know here. None of these 3 deaths, Atwine's, Lieutenant Enya's, or the investigators, has ever been officially, conclusively proven in a Ugandan court to be connected to the Kiyingi murder case itself. Ugandan authorities have never announced a confirmed motive linking them. It's entirely possible some or all of these deaths had unrelated causes. But ask yourself this: what are the odds? 3 people, all directly tied to one murder investigation, all dead within roughly a year of each other, none of the deaths ever fully explained to the public. Even if you can't prove a connection in a court of law, it's very hard not to notice the pattern. This is the part of Uganda's legal history that rarely gets discussed outside legal circles. How often, in high-profile cases, the people closest to the truth simply don't survive long enough to testify. The Kiyingi case isn't even the only example. Around the same era, other high-profile Ugandan murder investigations, including the killing of state prosecutor Joan Kagezi years later, would also stall for years without any conviction, a pattern this channel is going to keep coming back to. Despite everything, a trial did go ahead. 6 months after the arrests, Dr. Aggrey Kiyingi and his co-accused stood before the High Court. The verdict shocked much of the country: acquittal. All of the accused were found not guilty. Justice Ruby Ori Opio, who presided over the case, was direct about why. The prosecution's entire case had rested heavily on the claim that Private Atwine had pulled the trigger, and with Atwine dead before trial, that central pillar of evidence could never be properly tested in court. The case, in the judge's own assessment, had been fatally weakened. Dr. Kiyingi walked free. So did his co-accused. The state didn't accept this as the end. In December 2006, prosecutors filed a formal notice of appeal, arguing the trial judge had failed to properly weigh the evidence that did exist. Here's the detail that, for many Ugandans following this case, is almost as disturbing as the murder itself: that appeal has never been heard. Not months later. Not years later. Court records show that as recently as a decade after it was filed, the appeal still hadn't reached a hearing, partly, according to court officials, because the accused repeatedly failed to appear for scheduled dates. The case simply stalled, and has remained stalled for close to 2 decades. To this day, officially, under Ugandan law, no one has ever been convicted for the murder of Robinah Kiyingi. So what actually happened at that gate in Konj in July 2005? There are, broadly, 2 ways people have interpreted this case over the years. One interpretation takes the acquittal at face value. The evidence genuinely wasn't strong enough once its central witness was dead, and the truth of what happened to Robinah Kiyingi may never be legally established. The other interpretation is far darker, that this was never really about weak evidence at all, but about a case where too many of the people who knew the truth didn't live long enough to share it, whether by coincidence or by design. Uganda's courts have never definitively settled which of these is correct. And nearly 20 years later, Robinah Kiyingi's family is still, officially, without an answer the law recognizes as final. This case isn't an isolated one-off in East Africa, and that might be the most unsettling part of researching it. Cases where a key witness or investigator dies before trial, where prosecutions stall for decades, where appeals are filed and simply never heard. This pattern repeats across the region far more often than most people realize. That if you want more of these, subscribe. This channel exists to dig into the cases East Africa doesn't talk about enough.